Hello out there from the Badger Rock Garden. We are here for the next in our virtual cooking workshop series, and today we have a very exciting recipe that is very seasonal for just this time of year when the elderberries are ripe. So, a couple of really important things to know about elderberries before you even think about picking them. First is to look at the color of the elderberry. Elderberries that you can use for medicinal uses for making syrup or other things are black or deep purple. Do not mess with red elderberries. They are toxic through and through. They are not for use as food or medicine, so please stay away from red elderberries. The berries are bright red on the red elderberry, and instead of kind of this umbrella-like shape of the flower, you see how the flowers got pollinated and turned into fruit. It's almost like an umbrella shape. This is the shape of flower you want to go for. If your elderberries are red and kind of more of a cone-shaped cluster like that, don't use them. They are not for use. And even if you do use black elderberries, black or purple elderberries, you need to just make sure that you're using them correctly because they are slightly toxic. The seeds inside the berries are the part that's slightly toxic. And so you need to either cook them. No, you need to cook them, period. And you can go a step further too and remove the seeds. So we're going to do that. We're going to make an elderberry syrup. And elderberry is a really fantastic plant. It's great for cold and flu season. It is an immune system booster, so it helps just keep you overall healthy. And when you do have a cold or flu, up your intake of your elderberry syrup. It'll help move it on through much quicker. So another way to identify elderberries, if you look at the leaves, they look like they're holding hands across the stem. That's called an opposite leaf formation. Most leaves are either opposite like that, like this, or they're alternate, which means they're not across the stem from each other, but they alternate. You want to make sure that your leaf clusters are not alternating, they're opposite. And look at this, it's like a compound leaf, so you have little leaflets to make one big leaf. So it's usually 2, 4, 6, 7 little leaves. Sometimes it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 little leaves, but it's usually in sets of 2, except for the final terminal leaf there is how you can, another way to identify elderberries. Also, the stems are hollow. If you wait until the season is over and you cut a stem, you can make little containers out of them. You can make flutes out of them. Elderberries are useful in so many different ways. They also are really, really fast growing. So if you plant an elderberry, you will have elderberries really fast. We planted these bushes last year to replace some that got lost during our construction here. And look, they're already making berries, so they're already ready to go. And when you're going to harvest them, you want to make sure they're ripe. So here's an example of an unripe elderberry cluster. You can see the berries are still green. And if you look just above it here is a beautifully fully ripe cluster where the berries are all a dark purple, almost black color. And to harvest them, you simply cut off the full cluster of berries, and then you can, it's called garbling them. I kind of like that word, so I like to use it. You can call it whatever you want. Removing the berries from the cluster, or garbling the berries from the cluster, you just take them off, and then you can use them. If it is 95,000 degrees out like it is today, and you don't feel like going in your kitchen and cooking on a hot stove, you can save your elderberries for use later by freezing them. I like to take the berries off of their, garble the berries off of their stems, and then put them in just freezer bags, and you can just stick them in the freezer and pull them out whenever you feel like it is an elderberry syrup making day in your kitchen. So I'm just going to harvest a few of these berry clusters that are ready to go. Another trick with elderberries is getting to them before the birds, because the birds also love to eat these berries. So you gotta keep your eyes on them so that as soon as they're ripe, you can get out and pick them before the birds get them. If you are not lucky enough to get them before the birds get them, look on the inside of a bush, because sometimes those little hidden away places where the birds can't get to, you'll still have tons of berries just ready for the taking. Before the berries are berries, these little clusters are these beautiful white flowers, and each little flower gets pollinated and grows into a berry. But the flowers you can also use for a medicine. For those, I usually dry them. You can make an elderberry tea that's got a nice sweet flavor. Its medicinal use is helping to bring down fevers, and it's just a really like nice, delicate floral flavor to add to a tea blend. If you have elderberries too where part of the cluster is ripe and part is not, you can always cut out the ripe parts of the cluster and leave the rest on the bush until they're ready to go. So I'm just going to grab the rest of these too. This one's not quite ready, but you can see we have 3 new little elderberries at Badger Rock. And a shout out to the MG&E team who comes every Earth Day week and plants trees with us in our classes at Badger Rock Middle School. They are the ones who brought these elderberries and helped us plant them last year. All right, so now that we have our elderberries picked and ready to go, we are going to head into the kitchen and show you all how to make a delicious and beautiful elderberry syrup. We'll see you soon. Hello again, we're back in the Badger Rock kitchen to turn the elderberries that we just harvested into a delicious and nutritious and medicinal elderberry syrup. So the first thing that I am going to do is take some ginger root. And ginger in itself is really medicinal. It's great for any kind of stomach ailments, indigestion, nausea. It's also great for cold and flu season, and it's a warming herb. So if you've ever had a ginger tea on a cold winter night, ooh, you know just what I'm talking about. It warms you up from your toes all the way to the tips of your hairs, I feel like. So ginger is a great addition to this syrup, both for its taste and for its medicinal qualities. So I'm just going to peel the skin off the ginger root. If you don't have fresh ginger root available, that's okay. You can use the powdered dried ginger you can get in the grocery store. It's not as good, the flavor, but it will do in a pinch. So feel free to use either kind of ginger that you feel moved to use. And we're going to get about 2 tablespoons worth of ginger. I like to grate it just because it makes it into smaller pieces that really all that ginger is in contact with that syrup, so that flavor and that medicine is really getting in there. So I just use a plain old cheese grater for this. If you don't have a cheese grater or you prefer just to chop it, you can do that too, and your syrup will still be just as good, I promise. But this is my favorite way to do it, is with the cheese grater. Just don't grate your fingers. I swear in this kitchen we have more accidents with the cheese graters than we do with the knives. Okay, so here's my ginger. So 2 tablespoons of ginger is probably about 1 inch of ginger root. You can kind of estimate it. Ginger is another one where if you buy the ginger root and you aren't ready to use it right away, you can freeze it to use it later. So I'm just going to put about 2 tablespoons of ginger root. Look at that. Guessed it just right. Into 3.5 cups of water. So all that's in this pot right now is just plain old water, 3.5 cups. And then I'm going to take the elderberries that I just took off of their flower head, and I'm going to scoop out. It doesn't really matter if you have a little bit of, of that fibrous kind of stem in there, because we're going to strain these out in the end. But if you want to pull out most of it, that will help you in the long run. So we're going to do 1 cup, and then we're going to do another 1/3 cup. So 1 1/3 cups to make this amount of elderberry syrup. Another really important ingredient that you don't want to leave out is the cinnamon. I usually put a teaspoon of cinnamon for this amount of elderberries. And cinnamon also is a very warming herb. When you cook this on your stovetop, you are going to feel like you are in a cozy winter wonderland. That's what this always makes me think of. This is like the holiday smell in your kitchen. So I'm just going to turn this on a burner to about medium high and bring it to a full boil. And once it comes to a full boil, you can turn it down to a simmer, and you're going to simmer it for about 45 minutes or until it decreases in volume by about half. So about half of that water should cook away, and what you're left with is this beautiful slurry of elderberry and ginger and cinnamon. If you want to add cloves, you sure can. Cloves are also a very warming, great medicine plant. We don't have any cloves, and me personally, I don't like the flavor of cloves, so I often leave them out. But feel free, if you were going to add cloves to this recipe, it would be about a half a teaspoon. And we just let it cook. And once it has decreased by half, what you're going to do is get a strainer. And you can cover the strainer in cheesecloth for a little extra straining. And you are going to pour your elderberry mixture through this strainer, and you're going to squeeze, squeeze, squeeze so all the juice comes out the other side and all the seeds of the elderberries and the skins stay in the strainer. So once you've squeezed all of that out, you have some elderberry seeds and such to put in your compost. And at that point is when you would add your honey. So you don't want to add honey while you're cooking, because if you're using raw honey, you don't want to cook it, because raw honey, part of the medicine of raw honey is in all the microbes that are living in the honey that are destroyed by heat. So we're using raw honey. Ideally, we would use honey from the Badger Rock bees, but we are clean out at the moment. So I had to go to the store and get some honey, but I did get raw honey. And we are going to, once that elderberry syrup is done cooking and strained through, that's when we would add 1 cup of honey. Really important, even though it seems like a lot, the sugar is what preserves the syrup. So you don't want to skimp on the sugar. It's also what turns it into a syrup. So your syrup, once you add your honey and mix it all in there, it's going to be more watery than maple syrup, but it's going to be thicker than like a beverage kind of syrup. And once it has the honey added in there, you can put it in a jar and you can stick it in the fridge, and it will keep for a few months in the fridge. You can also freeze it if you want to pull it out later in the winter if you want it to last the whole winter long. And for kind of a preventative medicine, if you're using it just to generally boost your immune system through cold and flu season, take up to a tablespoon a day if you're an adult, up to a teaspoon a day if you're a kid. And then once you get sick, you can up your elderberry syrup intake to take a dose every 2 to 3 hours while you're sick, and it will help your sickness resolve much quicker most of the time. So it's a delicious preventative herbal medicine. It's beautiful in color. It's this beautiful purple, deep purple color once it's cooked. It tastes delicious. And if you want to just eat it on pancakes, to be honest, we do this with our classes all the time because it's also just really, really delicious. So I won't keep you here to watch the whole rest of this process, but once this is cooked and half of that liquid has boiled away, you've poured it through the strainer, you've added your honey, you've popped it in jars, you have elderberry syrup to keep you going strong all through cold and flu season and enjoying yourself along the way. Thanks to y'all for tuning in, and I hope that we catch you next time.